What is it like being a single bachelor in China knowing that the men outnumber women by 34 million? Mainland Chinese male here. Based on the experience from me and my friends, if you are not born in a rich family, finding a GF becomes really hard if you fail to do that in high school or college, when most girls don't care that much about wealth. After girls start to work and pay checks by themselves, they start to realize that how harsh the life can be without money and how wonderful the life is if they can marry a rich guy. A common rule is that the male needs to own an apartment and a car before marriage. A 3-bedroom apartment in a major city of China is around $500,000. The price has doubled in Beijing. I graduated from a top university in China and worked in a top IT company as a software engineer. My salary was around $20,000 in the first year and $30,000 in the third year. It is a very well paid job in China, but still I cannot afford to buy an apartment unless I spend my parents' whole life saving on it. Actually, a lot of parents in China do spend all their savings for their only son's marriage. For myself, I met my girlfriend in college. I am so grateful that my girlfriend doesn't give a crap about these rules. She doesn't care about apartments, and so do her parents. We left China last year and we are pursuing our master degrees in North America. We will probably stay here after graduation because I always want to have my own house with yard, which is not even possible for me in China. All I see on here is info from a foreigner's perspective, and it's not wrong, but it isn't 100% correct either. I'll give you some information from at least a second-hand perspective. I moved to the US when I was 7 and all of my relatives are still in China. Some background on my family. They aren't rich, but they aren't dirt poor either. They live in a city and are about middle class. The thing that most foreigners don't understand is the role of the family in helping you find a spouse. If you have a big enough family, like myself and my cousins, you won't have any troubles. You might not find a model or anything, but it's not as difficult as you might think. A lot of the time it's through connections. Your family will help you set up meetings with their friends' daughters. From there it's a matter how well you can make it click. For example, I have 2 male cousins close to my age who married earlier than me. One of them lives in the city and is considered a bit lower middle class simply because he doesn't have a steady job, never finished high school. He works part-time jumping from job to job, as is the custom with a lot of people his age without a college education in China. He married, and while it's not exactly ideal, they get in a lot of fights about him keeping a job. They're still together with a kid. My other cousin lives in the countryside, what you would consider the rural area. He's older than me and didn't even finish middle school. He works random jobs as well but helps with the family farm. He'd be considered a bit poor but still found a wife with the help of his family. They have a kid as well last I heard. So I want to stress the effect of your family in determining your chances of finding a spouse. If your family has connections and friends, then you shouldn't have that much of a problem. You have a pretty large pool to work with. You might not always get the best looking one, but it's still possible. It's only, as others have said, when all branches of your family are dirt poor that you're screwed. That's very interesting. Thank you for your post. The thing is, when you are in China, you don't notice that men outnumber women. If you walk down any given street, you will find that almost all shopkeepers are women. Chinese shops will typically hire young single women to be the face of their business, and job listings have no qualms saying they only want attractive females to apply and to please supply a photo on their applications. Also, males and females are brought up to not interact with each other. There isn't very much mingling of the sexes, and you see it in kindergarten all the way through university. Boys form close friendships with other boys, girls with girls. In China, if you dress to impress, you'll get compliments from the same sex, rather than the opposite sex. What this does is it creates a barrier between the sexes, and many young men and women find it extremely difficult to start dating. TLDR. Even though there are more men than women, you'd never know it from the abundance of young single women in China. Source: I lived in China, Beijing and Shanghai, for 12 years. Chinese guy here. The top comments are spot on about how bad it is, but as hard as it is in China, it's not much better in the United States, where popular culture does its best to perpetuate the stereotype that Asian guys are effeminate and have small dongs. Yeah, must agree with you. For me, the stereotype disappeared when I saw this Asian guy with a full-on beard. It was manly and sexy, and I almost wet my panties right there. I am a single bachelor living in China, but I'm a foreigner. For expats, it's pretty good being single, as there is that foreigner mystique and the general idea that all expats are rich, so finding women is pretty easy. As for Chinese, it's a bit of a different story. The actual number is closer to 38 million more men, but also realize that this doesn't mean either single men, gay men, or anything else. It's an overall statistic. That said, there are a lot of single Chinese guys. Almost every guy in my office is between 21-30 and they're almost all single. To even consider getting a wife, a Chinese guy needs to own a home, apartment in a big city, a car, and preferably make XXX money every month. The women have high expectations, as they're expected to pop out their one-child policy kid before the age of 24-25. Also keep in mind that there are a lot of girls, women, and various types of sex-related jobs, and men are rich successful men get married to someone their family likes, then buys 2 or 3 more apartments for their mistresses. It's a skewed situation either way, but basically, unless you have money as a single guy in China, you're not that well off. Men or girls will date the fat, disgusting, old guy with a wife because he can give them $10,000 a month over the handsome, young, kind guy that lives paycheck to paycheck. Hope that helps. Yup, met a mainlander the other day and his GF just broke up with him because he didn't earn enough money. Makes me wonder if we'll see the population slowly go down 40-50 years from now when men are single guys and couples who can't afford to have children pass away. I'm a little late to this, but at least OP will see my response. I'm less than qualified to answer this, as I'm a Eurasian living in Shanghai, but I've been here 3 years, and almost all of my friends are local, so I can give some perspective. Problem: the top comment by U-Boat-Tibeteens is pretty dead on. The standard thinking is you need to own property before you can even think about starting a family, or dating seriously, for that matter. This, combined with low wages, even by Asian standards, and high property prices, even by Western standards, at least in Shanghai, combined with the skewed gender ratio, makes it frustrating for the average Chinese male. On top of this is the fact that a lot of Chinese males are, quite frankly, boring. Most of them have been excessively babied by their parents and led to believe they're more awesome than they are. Few of them have traveled abroad, and many get their ideas about other countries from the movies and media, which leads another set of problems, and that's not even mentioning a censored internet. All of my Chinese male friends are single, and honestly, none of them have very appealing personalities. The future looks grim for them. I don't know how they'd find a partner even if there were an equal gender balance. In Shanghai, there's a big expat population which is making it immeasurably harder for Chinese males. Not to mention the rich, who are disgustingly rich, and surely have more than one female on their payroll. Attempted solutions: the only one I know about is parents go to parks with a paper of their child's information, effectively advertising them for marriage. There was a Vice HBO segment on this, but it was so bad that you'll have to Google it yourself. Other than that, I don't know what really can be done. Essentially, since everyone expects to purchase their own place, the males are driven to be more competitive and more successful if they want any shot at finding a partner. The rest of them, I guess they just give up and get their rocks off at one of the many sex shops that can be had for cheap, $30 or less, and some of them are serious lookers. It should also be noted that the gender imbalance is in the countryside, since most of the girls come to major cities like Shanghai and Beijing for work. So much so that there are plenty of hot single girls here waiting for Mr. Right. With that said, my comment about my boring Chinese male friends still stands. I don't know how they're going to find someone when they have the attitude of an angsty middle school virgin. TLDR. It's pretty fricked up to be an average Chinese male living in China. As a young Chinese woman who's lived there for the first 18 years of my life, I can say with confidence that things are pretty grim for the boys and girls back home. Men are expected to possess substantial wealth in order for them to consider marriage and family. This in turn, in my opinion, perpetuates the misogynist notion of women being commodities, because the rich guy almost always gets the girl. Another aspect of the problem is the rural-urban difference. A rich guy from the city has a much bigger advantage than his rural counterpart, because the rural population tends to be more conservative and their families more extended. That means a city woman who marries a country guy basically just marries his entire family back in some small rural town. So in the end, the vast population of bachelors in China is mostly country guys working in cities. Well handled. Thanks for posting. There is a really interesting Vice short documentary on HBO Go that covers this very subject. If anyone has it, I would suggest they check it out. In the documentary they show that there are meetings where parents come to shop their children off to each other. Everyone brings pictures and tries to pitch their kids to one another. The first question the parents of single women almost always asked was, how much money do your son make? Chinese do living in China ATM. It's not a problem for me since chicks dig my cold solid 3 inches of American passport. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the ratio is way worse in Alaska. At least that's what I was told by my Alaskan friend. There are 10 single men to every single woman in some parts of Alaska, but 9 of them are totally weird. That's how my aunt explained it to me. If you're not Chinese and unbound by their strange customs, you can marry a woman in her late 20s. They have this late 20s equals unmarriable thing there, and you could probably find a very grateful and career-minded woman who would have severe difficulty getting a Chinese husband at her age. I was an expat teaching in Shanghai, and the dating scene for Western women was, at best, abysmal. I'd have been happy to date a Chinese man, but they were either too shy, passive, or preferred to date within their race. Other expats seemed to prefer to date Chinese women as well. I had my longest dating dry spell while living in China. It was quite a shock when I returned home to have the attention from men in public again. I should add that I am attractive and fit. TL doctor dating in China was difficult for Western women also, despite the odds being seemingly favorable. Source: expat in Beijing with a Chinese. So, you need to understand that in China, you don't really mix between classes. In the West you could easily see a laborer and a lawyer compromising and making it work, but here it's just unheard of. So with that said, many guys are left alone, but there is also a large population of single females left alone, educated women, who have careers and ambitions, who can't marry the largely single male population because they all earn less educated, etc. And they are getting more and more desperate because their biological clock is not on their side. Back to both genders, the graduates of big cities also typically take jobs that require them to work insane hours, so they have no chance of meeting anyone else. 15 to 18-hour working days in peak seasons is not unheard of. If you don't comply, goodbye. TLDR. It's not just the sheer number of men, it's also the availability of them. When situation gets desperate for some guys, they resort to buying a wife from poorer Southeast Asia countries like Cambodia or Vietnam. You'd think tolerance for gay guys at least would be encouraged. It solves the 3 huge issues of overpopulation, low adoption rates, and the men-women imbalance. TLDR. The problem is localized in rural China and it won't spill over cause city women will not date a farmer. Some of those men are gay, some of those men are old and off the dating market, some of those men are so preoccupied with earning money that they have completely lost interest in women. China is a very large country. Unless every single man tried to find themselves a woman at the same time, there isn't a problem. Another factor is the localization of the problem. Most of the relevant parts of China don't really have this problem, and it is only the rural areas that have sweeping birth preferences towards males. The rural areas are granted special exception to the one-child policy. Source: I am a first-generation Chinese American who has significant family ties in Guangzhou. Speaking on behalf of my cousin who was once a bachelor, he's married now. He's from mainland, born and raised, as well as his wife. My cousin is not attractive, but he has a great personality and very successful. He pursued his wife, who is really pretty, and I'm sure she saw how promising his prospects were. Very intelligent man who managed to get a teaching visa in the United States at Binghamton University. So, he moved to the US while his wife met his parents. She was still his girlfriend, Then, once he placed a job, they got married. She moved to the US with him. These are the facts as I know. I don't know his personal life, but I can say that, yeah, in this case, my cousin's talents and promising future attracted his wife. IDK if this was what you were looking for, OP. As a Chinese guy who have been living in Europe almost all my adult life, I can't really answer this question from my own experience. But I do have some single guy friends living in China and I talk to them every once in a while. I know 34 million sounds horrible on paper, but in reality it's not that bad. Most of my childhood friends are now married or with GFS and BFS. The few that are single are indeed under tremendous pressure from society. So are their parents and grandparents, as neighbors or acquaintances tend to think you are weird if you are still single after a certain age. They would probably think that either you are gay or you have some kind of sex-related issues. P.S. I see a lot of you were talking about premarital sex. And yes, it's quite common in cities, and it's not frowned upon. Much less so in the rural area where everyone knows everyone. There was a rather depressing quote by a girl on a popular dating show a few years back that sums up the situation here. On the show, an unemployed bachelor asked one woman if she would ride a bicycle with him on a date. She responded by saying, "I would rather cry in a BMW than smile on a bicycle." That quote neatly sums up the attitude that many people in China these days. But not all. There are still enough people opposed to this attitude that there is hope. A teensy, tiny bit, anyway. Okay, so in a typical Chinese woman's eyes, good husband equals rich husband. She needs to be a princess and you need to serve her. Chinese guy's eyes, virgin. I'm not making this up. I mean, the US is like 50.8% women, and China is like 51.3% men. It's a big number, but you have to remember just how many people are in China. A lot of the men are very sexually frustrated because either they can't find a woman or the woman they found doesn't like sex. Just like my marriage and subsequent divorce. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.